in every page or we contest the will and you get nothing." My brother said that to me in the kitchen of the house I grew up in, 3 days after we buried our grandmother. I remember the granite countertop was cold under my palms. I remember the smell of leftover casserole someone had dropped off after the funeral. I remember thinking, he really just said that out loud. To my face? I'm a CPA. I've spent 8 years looking at numbers that don't add up and finding the exact line where someone made a choice to lie. I know what fraud looks like in a spreadsheet. I didn't expect to have to recognize it at my grandmother's kitchen table. Let me back up. My grandmother, Nana Bia, raised me from the time I was 11. My mom passed from ovarian cancer that year, and my dad had already been gone in every way that mattered long before that. It was just Nana Bia and me in this pale yellow house in Dayton for the better part of a decade. She taught me to make pie crust from scratch. She drove me to every single SAT prep class. She sat in the second row at my college graduation with a handmade sign that said my name in glitter letters. My brother, on the other hand, called her twice a year, Christmas and her birthday if she was lucky. He moved to Scottsdale when he was 24 and built what he likes to call a lifestyle. A big house, a leased BMW, a wife named Kendall who once told me at Thanksgiving that she didn't eat bread anymore as a personality trait. They had 2 kids I'd met maybe 4 times. Nana Bia never said a bad word about him. That was the kind of woman she was. When she died last March, peacefully in her sleep, which is the only mercy in any of this, I was the one who had been handling her affairs for 2 years. I had power of attorney. I paid her property taxes, managed her investment accounts, took her to her cardiologist every 6 weeks. I knew exactly what her estate looked like. The house, fully paid off, valued around $310,000 in the current Dayton market. A brokerage account with just under $180,000. Some jewelry, some furniture, some savings bonds from the 80s. And I knew what her will said because I had helped her update it 18 months before she died, sitting right there at that kitchen table with her estate attorney, a methodical woman named Ms. Park, who explained every single clause out loud and had Nana Bea repeat back what she understood before signing. Nana Bea left the house to me. She left the brokerage account to be split evenly between my brother and me. She left the jewelry to me with the specific instruction that I offer him first choice of 1 piece for his wife. It was fair, more than fair honestly. He hadn't been here. He showed up for the funeral in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Kendall wore sunglasses the entire graveside service. I didn't say anything. I held it together because that's what I do, and because Nana Bia deserved a peaceful goodbye. Then, 4 days later, my brother called and said he needed to discuss the estate. He came to the house, my house now, technically, and he sat down at that kitchen table and he slid a document across to me. It was a will. It had my grandmother's name on it. It had a date on it, dated 8 months before she died. And in it, the house and the entirety of the brokerage account were left to my brother. I received the savings bonds and the jewelry. I looked at it for a long time without saying anything. I'm good at that, staying quiet while my brain works. Occupational habit. Where did this come from? I asked. Grandma gave it to me last summer, he said. She wanted to update her wishes but didn't want to make a big thing of it. I turned to the signature page. I know my grandmother's handwriting. I had been reading it on birthday cards and grocery lists and little notes she tucked into my college care packages for 15 years. I had watched her sign her name on legal documents 18 months ago in this exact kitchen. This signature was not hers. It wasn't dramatically different. Whoever did it had been careful, but the loop on the capital B in Beatrice was wrong. Nana Bia always closed it completely. A tight little circle because she'd learned penmanship in Catholic school in the 1950s, and she was precise. This one was open at the top. And her last name, she always lifted her pen between the first and second syllable. There was a microscopic gap in the ink. The signature was continuous, smooth, like someone had practiced it and gotten 90% of the way there. I set the document down. I didn't cry when I got the text. I didn't call my best friend in a panic. I didn't even That's when he said it. Sign every page or we contest the will and you get nothing. I kept my face completely still. I said, I need to think about it. And I walked him to the door. I stood in the front hallway for about 2 minutes after his car pulled out of the driveway. Then I went to my laptop and I sent Ms. Park an email marked urgent. Miss Park called me the next morning. I described the document, the date, the signature discrepancy. I could hear her typing as I talked. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. The will I prepared and executed with your grandmother is on file with my office, she said. It is dated 14 months before the document you're describing. To my knowledge, she did not engage another attorney or execute a subsequent will. But the only way to resolve this definitively is through probate. She explained the process. The will I had, the one Ms. Park prepared, would be submitted to the Montgomery County Probate Court. If my brother intended to introduce his document as a competing will, he would have to do so formally. At that point, both documents would be examined. If there was any question of fraud, the court had mechanisms for that. Document everything, she said. Don't sign anything he puts in front of you. And if he contacts you again before we've spoken to the court, record it if Ohio law allows. Ohio is a one-party consent state. I looked it up before I'd even finished the call. I want to be honest about how I felt during those days. I wasn't dramatic about it. I didn't cry, not right away. What I felt was something closer to a very cold, very focused kind of fury. The kind that doesn't make you shaky, it makes you precise. I had just buried my grandmother, and my brother, who had let her spend the last decade of her life with almost no contact from him, had apparently decided that the inconvenience of being cut out of her primary assets was grounds for fraud. I started keeping a file, time-stamped notes of every conversation, screenshots of texts. I pulled up the original will from my own records and photographed every page. I went through Nana Bea's files. She was meticulous, kept everything in labeled folders in the hall closet, and I found her copy of the Ms. Park will, signed and notarized, exactly as I remembered it. I didn't call my friend and then my phone down dramatically on. No notes about wanting to change her estate plan? Nothing. My brother texted me twice that week. The first text was cordial, almost friendly. Just checking in, hope I was holding up okay, we should really get this wrapped up soon. The second one, 3 days later, was less friendly. He said he'd spoken to an attorney who confirmed the later dated will superseded the earlier one, and that I should think carefully about making this adversarial. I read that text standing in the parking lot of a Kroger. I took a screenshot. I texted back, I appreciate you reaching out. I'm working with Ms. Park on next steps. I'll keep you posted. Then I called Ms. Park. She had already begun the probate filing. She told me she'd also reached out to a handwriting expert she worked with periodically, a forensic document examiner who had testified in court cases before. His name was Dr. Okafor, and he agreed to review both signatures. The waiting was the hardest part. I went to work every day. I ran my client accounts, reviewed quarterly filings, sat in on Zoom calls about depreciation schedules. I went home to my apartment. I had not yet moved into Nana Bea's house. I couldn't bring myself to yet. And I ate dinner and I tried to watch TV and I mostly just sat there thinking about my grandmother's handwriting. I thought about a card she sent me when I passed my CPA exam. She'd written, I always knew, love, Nana Bea. 4 words and a name. The B closed tight, like always. 3 weeks after the probate filing, Dr. Okafor delivered his preliminary findings to Ms. Park. She called me on a Tuesday evening. The signature on my brother's document was inconsistent with known exemplars of my grandmother's handwriting across 15 data points. Dr. Okafor was prepared to testify to that with a high degree of professional competence. Additionally, Ms. Park had obtained records from the notary whose stamp appeared on my brother's document. That notary had no record of notarizing anything for my grandmother, ever. There are moments in life where the ground just sort of firms up under you, where the thing you suspected is confirmed and it's both worse and better than you expected. Worse because someone actually did it, and better because now it's real, it's documented, and there is a clear and specific path forward. I asked Ms. Park what happened next. She said she was obligated to notify the court of the forensic findings. She said the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office would likely be informed. She said my brother should retain a criminal defense attorney, not just an estate attorney, if he hadn't already. I sat with that for a minute. Is there anything I need to do? I asked. You've already done it, she said. You documented everything. You didn't sign anything. You trusted your instincts when you looked at that signature. I thought about all the times I'd been told, usually by men, usually when I was trying to make a point about something I knew professionally, that I was reading too much into something, that I was being oversensitive, that not everything was a conspiracy. My grandmother's bee was wrong. I knew it. I was right. What followed was not a dramatic confrontation. There was no scene at the house, no shouting match, no moment where my brother broke down and admitted everything to my face. Real life doesn't usually work that way. What happened was slower and more bureaucratic and, in its own way, more satisfying. The probate court rejected his document based on the forensic examination. The case was referred to the prosecutor's office. I was told my brother retained a criminal attorney in Scottsdale. I only know this because my aunt, my dad's sister, who still sends me Christmas cards, mentioned it in a phone call where she was very carefully not taking sides. My brother called me once, about 6 weeks after the probate ruling. I was walking to my car after a client meeting. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. His voice had a quality in it I'd never heard before, not quite apologetic, but something adjacent to it, something that recognized without quite saying that it had not gone the way he planned. He said he hoped I wasn't going to make things worse than they needed to be. He said family was important and that Nana Bay would have wanted us to work it out. He said he was sure we could come to some kind of arrangement. I listened to the voicemail in my car with the engine off. Then I forwarded it to Ms. Park. I didn't call my best friend and even put my phone down dramatically on. The criminal investigation is ongoing. I'm not going to pretend I have certainty about how it ends because I don't, and that's not the point of this. What I can tell you is that the estate is proceeding according to Nana Bay's actual wishes. Ms. Park's will stands. The house is mine. I moved in 2 months ago. The first weekend, I scrubbed everything and repainted the front bedroom, the one that used to be mine when I was 11 and 12 and 13, and slowly figuring out how to survive losing my mother. I put my desk under the window where hers used to be. I unpacked my books onto her shelves. The first night I slept there, I found one of her notes. It had slipped between the nightstand and the wall, and I almost missed it. Just a small square of notepaper, the kind she kept in every room. It said, "For emergencies, bah." And there was a $20 bill paper clipped to it. I sat on the edge of the bed and I held that piece of paper and I let myself cry in a way I hadn't let myself do yet. Not because I was sad exactly, more because she was so completely herself, right up to the end. She tucked emergency money behind the nightstand because of course she did. She wrote her name because of course she did. The B was closed, tight perfect loop, just like always. I still have that note. I put it in the same folder where I keep every document from the estate, the probate filing, the forensic report, the notary records, the timestamp texts, evidence that she was real and that she was mine, and that I fought for her the only way she would have approved of. Quietly, methodically, and without giving an inch. I keep coming back to that $20 bill behind the nightstand. Nana Bia didn't leave it there for any particular emergency. She just believed in being prepared, quietly, without making a production of it. That was her whole philosophy. Do the right thing, do it carefully, and don't wait for someone to notice. She lived that way for 81 years, and I think, without ever sitting me down and explaining it, she taught me to live that way too. What my brother did had a logic to it if you squinted it from a certain angle. He saw an asset. He calculated that I was the path of least resistance. Younger without his resources, probably too emotional after the funeral to scrutinize the document closely. He figured that grief makes people compliant. That's a bet a lot of people make about the ones who loved hardest, who showed up the most, who actually did the work. They assume the caretaker is the soft target. He was wrong about that, not because I'm exceptional, but because Nana Bea spent years teaching me, by example, that doing the right thing and doing the smart thing are usually the same thing. You document. You verify. You don't sign something you haven't read. You trust the specific, concrete details over the smooth, reassuring stories someone is trying to tell you. Those aren't just professional habits, they're moral ones. They're how you stay honest yourself and how you catch dishonesty in others. There's a version of this story where I sign his document, where grief and intimidation are enough to make me just want it to be over. I understand that version. I felt the pull of it. There's a real cost to fighting. In time, in money, in the particular exhaustion of having to treat your own brother as an adversary. It would have been easier in the short term to let it go. But easier isn't the same as right. And I knew, standing in that hallway after he left, that if I signed away what Nana Bea actually wanted because I was too tired to fight for it, I would be letting her down in a way I couldn't undo. She didn't raise me to fold under pressure. She raised me to close the loop. Tight, precise. The way she made her be. The part that took real discipline wasn't the forensic report, or the probate filing, or even staying calm while my brother tried to intimidate me. The hardest part was the waiting, doing the methodical, unglamorous work, saving texts, writing timestamps, pulling files, without knowing if any of it would matter. That's where most people give up. Not because they stop caring, but because sustained effort without guaranteed reward is genuinely hard. You have to believe that being thorough is worth it even when no one is watching. It was worth it. What I know now, more clearly than I did before any of this, the outcomes of our lives are not random. They follow from the choices we make when it would be easier to make a different one. My brother made a choice. I made a choice. The notary records existed because honesty leaves paper trails. The forensic evidence existed because my grandmother's integrity was literally written into her handwriting, into the way she'd formed letters since she was a girl in Catholic school. You cannot forge character, you can only reveal its presence or its absence. I painted the front bedroom last month. I put my desk under the window. I go to work, I come home, I make pie crust from scratch on Sundays because Nana Bea taught me how, and I am not going to let that disappear. The B is closed, it always will be.